Hi friends, welcome to the channel JV and CIB Made Simple. So this is our English version of the lecture of unit number 1 of Ie&Ifs. The topic is overview of the Indian economy, and especially those who are from south and are facing problem in Hindi lecture, I am bringing English lecture for them. This is the first lecture of this particular series. We will continue on daily basis. I will provide you the further lecture. Hope you will enjoy this particular session. Now let's begin with the first point that we have. The first point is regarding the evolution of these are the topic we are going to study. First of all, we will see the objectives of this particular chapter. Then after, we will delve into evolution of Indian economy, basic characteristics of Indian economy pre-British period, economy till 2008 and after 2008, and finally we will see structural changes in the Indian economy. So now let's start with the first point that we have. So understanding Indian economic challenges before independence, right? So the first point is, as you can see, the first point is Indian economic journey. That's the point. Indian evolution of Indian economy. So imagine 1,000 years ago, India and China were the biggest economy in the world. Together they made more than half of the world total wealth. You can see it is almost 50.5. That together India and China made 50.5% of the global GDP. That means half of the world total wealth was with India and China. This was a time when India was known for its rich trade, skilled craftspeople and advanced agriculture. But fast forward to the 1600 AD, India and China were still leading the pack, but Indian economy was getting even bigger. It was now contributing more to the world wealth than before. You can see India accounting for 23% of global GDP, while China accounting for 29% of the global GDP, right? So now let's talk about the colonial impact. So now you can see here, so a century later, the China GDP has declined while India has risen to the, earlier it was 23% and it has increased to almost 24.4%. So it was almost 1.4% increment. Now let's talk about the colonial impact. So from point number this, we will discuss the colonial impact. See, unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse when the British came to rule India. Their focus was on benefiting Britain, not India. Because of this, Indian economy started to shrink. It went from being a major player in the world economy to a much smaller one. Right? You can see British colonialism altered the dynamics, and by 1820, India's share has plummeted to the 16.1%. It is self-explanatory, right? Now, rising from the ashes after gaining independence. Okay, so let's talk about the Indian economy Rianza. Right, let's discuss the Indian economy Rianza. So after the gaining independence from British rule, India faced many challenges, but slowly and steadily the country started to rebuild its economy. Today, India is once a major force in the global economy. Its contribution to the world wealth has grown significantly. So this is the point. Now let's talk about the next slide. That the topic is real wealth versus money on paper. Right, let's differentiate real wealth versus money on paper. Imagine comparing the cost of living in different countries. So there are something like food, there are something like housing, there are something like transportation. Food, housing, transportation. Okay, this can be much cheaper in one place than another. So that's where purchasing power parity, the terms called PPP, purchasing power parity, comes in. It's a way to compare economy based on what people can actually buy, not just how much money they have. Right? So that's the point, purchasing power parity, that is called PPP. Right? PPP is a way to compare economy based on what people they can actually buy, not just how much money they have. So India might not be number 3 in the world if you just look at money, but when you look at what the money can actually buy, it is actually the third biggest economy after the US and China. Right? So India is ranked in third in the world after China, US in terms of purchasing power parity. Means what I'm talking about, if you just look at the money, India might not be at number 3, but when you look at what that money can buy, it is actually the third biggest economy after US and China. Please remember this point, very very important. For a long time under the British rule, India economy was stuck in neutral. It was not growing much at all. It was like a car without enough gas. Even before the British left, India's economy was in pretty bad shape. That's what it's talking about this in this particular line. Right? Even before the British left, India's economy was in pretty bad shape. It was like a house that had not been fixed up in years. Now, building a new economy from the scratch What does it mean? When India finally became independent, it was like starting a new business. The country has to figure out how to run its economy from scratch. The country has to figure out how to run the economy from scratch. It was a huge challenge to organize everything and get the economy moving again. It was like putting together a giant puzzle with no picture on the box. Right, you can see all this thing which I'm explaining is written here. Right, let's move to the next slide. The next slide is regarding the basic characteristics of Indian economy. See, suppose how rich is a country? This is a pertinent question. Imagine trying to figure out how rich a person is. One way is to look at how much money they earn each year. For country, we look at average money earned by each person. That is called per capita income. You see this word? This is called per capita income. That is means what? Average amount of money earned by each person. Now, if we talk about the India income bracket, the World Bank has divided country into 4 groups based on how much people earn. So India fall in the lower middle income group. So the first group is low income, second is lower middle income, the third is upper middle income, and the fourth is higher income. Right. So basic thing is that India falls under the lower middle income. So how this classification is done? Let me explore. See, the country having per capita income between $996 to $3,895 falls in this classification, and India on 2019 has per capita income of 1891. Right, that's why. Now, what are the reasons behind this? So let's see the challenges facing India. The first is poverty and other issues. So one reason for India low income is that many people are poor. This means that they don't have enough money for basic needs like food, clothing and shelter. Other problem like unemployment, lack of education also contribute to it. So yeah, of course it has written here like poverty, unemployment, illiteracy. These are the major factors which contribute to this particular instance. Now India plan for progress. So suppose let's talk about the 5-year plan here. 5-year plan, right? Let's talk about it. See, to tackle this problem, Indian government has created the 5-year plan, which is called Panchvarshya Yojana, right? It's like a roadmap for the country. The government set goals for the next 5 years and decide how to spend money to achieve them. This helps in improving different areas like education, healthcare, agriculture, etc. That's called India's 5-year plan, right? Okay. Now let's move to the next slide. Okay, so now let's talk about the Indian economy woes. The first thing is number of factors influence the nature of characteristics of Indian economy. What are those factors? The first factor is low per capita real income. So let's see the stage. India before independence was a country grappling with immense economic challenge. The economy was primarily agrarian, meaning most people depended on farming for living. We are talking about India before independence. This agrarian economic dependency, combining with other factors, led to a complex wave of problem. The first problem was rapid population growth. You can see here, rapid population growth. Imagine a classroom with a limited number of chairs. Suddenly many more students join. There are not enough chairs for everyone. This is similar to the rapid population growth. India's population was increasingly alarmingly, but the resource and jobs were not keeping up. This led to pressure on everything from food to housing. The second factor is high unemployment, underemployment and disguised unemployment. What does it mean? See, there are 3 terms here. The first term is unemployment. Let me explain these 3 terms clearly so that you have to get the conceptual understanding. That's what I am trying to bring it here. The first thing is unemployment. You know, this is when people are actively looking for job but can't find any. Imagine many people wanting to be doctors but only a few medical doctors are there, right? But only a few medical schools are there. That's the point. The second thing is underemployment. This is when people have jobs but they are not working to their full potential or earning enough. Thinking of a skilled engineer working as a taxi driver. The third is disguised unemployment. This is tricky. This is where more people are working than needed to do a job. For example, a family farm might have too many people working, but removing one person won't reduce the output. Right, that is called disguised unemployment. That means if you reduce one number, it won't affect the output. Right, that is called disguised unemployment. Now, the next factor is excessive reliance on primary sector. Yes, the primary sector is about extracting resources from the earth like farming, fishing, mining. India relied heavily on farming. This means that if there were bad crop, the whole economy suffered. It also limited opportunities for growth in other areas. The next thing was vicious circle of poverty. Poverty can be like a trap, right? Poor people often can't afford education or healthcare, which makes it harder for them to get good job. Without good job, they stay poor, and the cycle continues. The next point is rising unemployment. Of course, this is a pretty straightforward. More and more people were looking for job, but there were not enough, leading to frustration and economic hardship. Now let's talk about after independence. Let's talk about the Indian economy shift after independence. The situation started to change after independence. The government realized the problem and began planning to improve the economy. Agriculture importance decreased as the focus shifted to industries and services. This was an attempt to create more job and boost the economy. Right. Let's come to the next slide. The next slide is understanding Indian economic shift and struggle. So friends, if you want to get such type of lecture for the entire Ie&Ifs subjects, you can enroll in our Ie&Ifs video course or Ie&Ifs comprehensive plan. In comprehensive plan, in addition to this video course, you get PDF, mock test, capsule content, and also videos. If you want to get more detail regarding it, you can WhatsApp me on this particular number. I will provide you the detail how to access this particular course. Remember, this content is entirely in English. You won't face any problem in understanding the concept. It will be very useful. I will try to provide as much example as possible to make your concept clear, so that you can attempt the MCQs very easily. So if you want to enroll, kindly WhatsApp me on the number shown on the screen, or you can just WhatsApp me on the number in the description section. Let's continue our discussion. So the friends, agriculture used to be king. While I just talked now, for a long time, most Indian dependent on farming for their living, right? So in the 1580s, in the 1950s, almost half of Indian income came from agriculture. The next point is service sector took the lead. But things started to change over the time. Services like banking, IT, tourism become more important. By 1980, by 1980, these services were making more money than farming. You can see the contribution, right? Service sector contribution was 38% of the GDP, and industry was in the middle. Manufacturing means making the things was also important, but it did not grow as fast as the service. Now the point is drain on India. Let's talk about the drain on India, right? British rule, a drain on India. Now let's go back to the time when British ruled India. It was not a good time for Indian economy. First thing is taking our wealth. Britain took a lot of Indian money and resources. Imagine someone taking your pocket money every week. This meant less money for India to grow and develop. The second thing was raw material, not finished product. This thing you try to understand. See, India mostly sent raw material like cotton and iron ore to Britain. Britain turned them into product and sold them back to India at higher prices. Right. And the third thing was limited education, literacy, right? What does it mean? Most Indians couldn't read or write. This means there were fewer skilled people to help the economy grow. So to sum it up, India economy has come a long way. After independence, we focused on growing industry and services, right? So this is about Indian economy in the British period. Now, imagine India as a wealthy kingdom. In the year 1600, India was one of the richest country in the world. People from all over come to trade and buy things. But things took a random turn. By the time the British left in 1947, India was a poor country. How did this happen? Right. Earlier, India used to be richest country in the world, but by the time British left India, it was the poorest country. So how did this happen? So the British East India Company was like a big business. They came to India with two main goals. What were the two main goals of British India? Right. Their two main goal was, the first was finding raw material. They wanted things like cotton, tea, spices to take back to England and use in their factory. And the second was selling their product. They wanted to sell English-made goods to Indian. So this marked the start of long period of British colonial control over the convenient economy. So the first phase, you can see it is divided into three different phases, from 1600 to 1757, from 1757 to 1857, and the third is British Crown period, which is 1838 onward. Right. So the first phase was started in the East India Company in 1600 AD. The company has two goals: procuring raw material for the factory and find their marketplace for the completed good. So they procure raw material from India and they send back to England, and from and that processed material is sent back to India and sold there. The second phase was robbery disguised as trade. After the British East India Company won the Battle of Plassey, things got really bad for India. Instead of fair trade, it was more like a stealing, right? Stealing. The company stole money. They take huge amount of money from Indians, pretending it was for trade. Next, farmer exploitation. That means what? They made farmer pay a very high taxes, leaving them with almost nothing. Corrupt official. The company leaders were greedy and dishonest, getting super rich by taking advantage of the Indian. Now let's talk about the phase 3, the third phase. The third phase began in 1827 when the British quashed the Sepoy Mutiny marked by the colonial exploitation. What does it mean? The third phase started with the British won the Sepoy Mutiny. They become even more cruel. The British stopped Indian business from growing, forcing people to buy British product. Instead of food crop, farmers were forced to grow cotton and other thing for British factory. All the money India made went back to Britain, leaving India poor. The British made Indian students learn English and study British subject, ignoring Indian history and culture. Because of all this, India went from being a very rich country to very poor one. In just a few hundred years, India's share of the world money and trade dropped from 23% to 3%, 33% to 3%. See, what a dramatic change, right? 33% to 3%. It is a sad story about how a powerful country took advantage of another. The next point is British exploitation of the country of India. The bitter fruit of commercialization. British turned Indian agriculture into business. This has terrible consequences. First thing is new middlemen, right? Rich people stepped in between farmer and buyer, taking most of the profit. The next point is frequent famines. What does it mean? Because farmers were forced to grow cash crop instead of food. Many people were starved during bad harvest. And the third thing is landless farmer. Many farmers lost their land and become poor laborer. Let's talk about it in the context of railways, right? The British built a railway, but not in help India. They wanted easy transport to move raw material and finish good quickly and cheaper. Western education, a double-edged sword. British introduced English education, but it was a bad deal. First thing is lost identity. What does it mean? So many Indians forgot their own culture while learning English. And the second point is lack of real skill. It means what? They learned English, but they don't get practical skill to help Indian. So this is about the draining India wealth. This is not wealth drain. You have heard the word wealth drain, right? So the British took huge amount of money from India. This is called wealth drain. Company profit. The first point is regarding the company profit. So the British East India Company sent most of its profit back to Britain. The British officials sent their saving back home. British business in India sent their profit back to Britain, and government taxes. These were the major sources of the income from this particular scheme. So friends, this is our part 1 lecture. I will continue the next part in the next lecture. If you want next lecture, you can WhatsApp me on the number shown on the screen. I will provide you the detail how to access our Ie&Ifs video course or the PDF course or mock test course, any course you require. For more detail, please WhatsApp me on this particular number. Thank you.